Hello, everyone, and welcome to NextM, Less Cookies, Better Data. I am Carlos Casal. I'm Director of Data and Audiences at GroupM EMEA. And in this session, I will give you an overview of the cookieless revolution, the changes happening to digital identity, and what comes next for the future of media. So, what happened to cookies? By now, most of us working in digital media are already familiar with third-party cookies, and even some of the new technologies posed to replace them. We have seen countless articles and news about universal IDs, consent, flocks, and so on, and it can be difficult to keep up with so many changes. Cookies have been a standard for around 20 years, and they've been the only mechanism that we had available to measure frequency and reach. But it is a very archaic, very cumbersome mechanism, and every company had to generate their own cookies. So this proliferation of cookies around the web created negative side effects. Websites malfunction, they increase loading times, and in some instances, they cause data leakage. So it is unsurprising that they are going away. Now, since Chrome's announcement in January 2020 of the deprecation of third-party cookies, we have seen a huge acceleration of technological invention in advertising technology. New restrictions as well to technologies that we rely on, such as device IDs and even IP addresses. This revolution represents a threat to many of our processes, from targeting to optimization to measurement, but also a big opportunity, an opportunity to redefine what identity means online, to make better use of more meaningful data points, and to focus really on outcomes, on the metrics that really matter. These changes have been coming for some years now, and they are driven mainly by three factors. Firstly, a huge fragmentation in the connected devices that consumers use, a move away from the web and towards apps, and an increased awareness of how personal data is collected and used. Secondly, a shift towards the use of authenticated or deterministic identifiers, so email addresses and phone numbers, especially within certain platforms, the so-called walled gardens, and restrictions to who and how can access that data, but also browsers, which are exerting more control over who and how can collect browsing data and are creating another layer of identity opacity, increasingly restricting cross-site tracking and the cookie's lifespan. And finally, and perhaps more importantly, new data protection and privacy regulations across the world, from the US to China to Brazil, and in particular, here in Europe with the adoption of GDPR and e-privacy regulations. The roadmap to this world without cookies is still a bit unclear, and like we've seen recently, is subject to change. Google has just announced that third-party cookies won't be completely gone until at least end of 2023. But in the meantime, lots of things are already happening. Apple continues to push its own restrictions, first through internet tracking protection in Safari, most recently with explicit consent requirements for the collection of IDFA, and now, just a few weeks ago, rolling out private relay with iOS 15, which can make it more difficult to access IP addresses. Open source industry initiatives continue to gain ground, with Unified ID 2.0, for example, now being regulated by the IB Tech Lab and rapidly gaining adoption across publishers all over the world. Chrome's Privacy Sandbox continues to push for a browser federated learning solution that will be open for testing by ad tech vendors end of this year. But also across its mobile operating system, Google has announced that later this year, Android will offer users to opt out from advertising ID tracking with mobile device ID. So while we wait for cookies to finally disappear, There are plenty of opportunities to test and get ready for the new generation of advertising technologies. Now, the impact of this new privacy by design web is very difficult to quantify, and it will not only depend on your industry vertical and the composition of your media mix, but also on the volume and quality of data that brands have about their own customers, and on how their marketing technology stack is optimized to capitalize on those innovations. The biggest impact will, of course, happen in media activation and measurement. Our ability to understand the reach of our campaigns and the frequency at which they are served. Programmatic will surely continue to grow, but of course there will be some disruption to the RTB auction-based chain that could lead to publishers and media buyers trading more directly using programmatic guaranteed or private marketplaces. So there will be steps to move the curation of inventory towards the publisher level, mitigating somehow the friction and added costs of SSPs and other exchanges, and decreasing the number of intermediaries between buyers and sellers. As publishers see a contraction to their revenue streams, this might be a catalyst for new subscription models and paywalls to ensure that they can still collect audience data based on authenticated identifiers. Attribution and performance analytics will most likely suffer too. Multi-touch attribution models of today will need to be rebuilt using machine learning algorithms and different proxies for identities, such as impressions and timestamps. And we'll have to rediscover more traditional measurement methodologies. However, our ability to understand consumers will largely remain unchanged. And of course, first-party technologies, such as content management systems, on-site personalization, and email marketing will not likely be affected. To help us minimize these impacts, there are new identity solutions being developed and adopted by both advertisers, publishers, and technology platforms. And we can broadly categorize these solutions in 4 buckets: first-party data solutions, industry cross-publisher identifiers, new browser technologies, and of course, contextual. For now, first-party data solutions remain the safest bet and largely undisputed. As long as the values change is explained to consumers and consent is recorded, both brands and publishers can be rest assured that investing in first-party data solutions, such as CDPs, is a future-proof strategy. After all, that's what made Google and Facebook so successful. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, contextual technologies continue to be a safe bet. And in recent months, we have seen a surge in new companies and acquisitions, but also in the development of new semantic technologies, such as natural language understanding. There are also being a renewed interest in making better use of the inventory signals that we have at our disposal, such as device, location, time of day, that don't depend on user identity. Industry identifiers are perhaps a less guaranteed option, while some deterministic ideas based on email addresses and phone numbers, such as UID 2.0, proposed first by the Trade Desk, is rapidly gaining publisher adoption, and even the green light by the IOB Tech Lab. There are some other proposals that relies on probabilistic methodologies, or what they called modeled identity, which might be less safe. Even if consent is gathered, the exact purpose of data collection by third parties can be difficult to explain and continues to be legally challenged by privacy advocates and regulators. On the other hand, we have the browser technologies, especially the Privacy Sandbox by Google, which, even if in paper seems a good idea, it's not clear the implications will be for the rest of the digital economy, and in particular for small publishers and other developers. So it is here in these middle 2 buckets that the battle is mostly happening nowadays. Sometimes it might seem that privacy regulations are at odds with market competition. So we will surely see a lot more discussions about the future of the open web and how can we ensure a rich ecosystem for everyone. But looking at the future now, what can we expect? It is almost certain that we will have a much more fragmented web, where consumer data remains in silos. Walled gardens will continue to make use of their identity graphs and will probably attract more advertisers, at least in the short term. Publishers across the world will try to compete by building their first-party data capabilities, asking users to register and in some cases offering subscription services. This category is so far not very scalable, but it is growing rapidly, especially for big global media owners and connected TV services. And finally, the rest of the open web will most likely remain anonymous, contextual targeting being the most prominent. It will be essential still to use the open web to gain a scale and to reach potential customers that we still don't know. Many of these connections between data silos will be difficult to make, and that will be a big challenge for the next few years. Finally, I will give you with 4 trends that I think is worth investing in right now. First, making better use of your first-party data, whether that's website or app analytics or CRM segmentation or data from your call centers. That will help continuously engage with current customers, but also give valuable insights into potential audiences. Making better use of contextual and inventory signals to optimize campaign effectiveness and drive efficiencies, and also find the right content to attract those desired audiences. Another trend to watch out for is the use of server-to-server connections, or APIs, as an alternative to pixel tracking. We've seen from Google to Facebook releasing new conversions APIs, and many other companies are also opting for sharing data in this way. And finally, investing in data science and machine learning to create models that not only optimize audience segmentation, but also allow us to create connections between silos and make better predictions and measure the results. So there's loads of exciting projects to work on in the next few months. Thank you very much for watching.
Thank you, Carlos. And hello, everyone. My name is Silvia Sparry, and I'm Global COO of Xaxis, the Outcomes Media company. Now, we run thousands of digital campaigns every month, so ensuring that we can still effectively optimize these campaigns, despite the changes that Carlos just described, is right at the top of my personal to-do list. And I will talk you through the approach that I'm taking to prepare our organization. Now, firstly, I would encourage anyone to keep abreast of the fast evolving industry landscape. There are dozens of proposed approaches, and a lot of these are still in development or haven't been fully scaled and tested yet. And in the short to medium term, this landscape will continue to be very complex. So the disappearance of third-party cookies represents a big change for our industry, and it is a moment to reflect on existing practices and whether we can be doing things better and focus on engaging with customers in a more privacy-friendly and more effective manner. Moving beyond cookies allows us to place users at the center of the work that we do, and by doing so, we accept that we are in the middle of a paradigm shift requiring new approaches and to the resources and the strategies that we use to run digital advertising. From a talent standpoint, this means complementing existing programmatic trading skill sets with marketing science expertise, where we can make sense of diverse data sets and orchestrate different media inputs through custom algorithms that can be owned by brands and not controlled by the ad tech companies. It means less focus on end-to-end programmatic technology stacks and a more agile approach to ad tech, thinking about technology as building blocks that we can use to work across existing technologies, ensuring brands aren't limited either by walled gardens or by technology fragmentation. The most obvious aspect we need to address is how we rethink the way we value data, weaning ourselves off audience as the sole trading signal for optimization, and instead making sure we understand all available data points. These first three shifts all then require a testing strategy whereby the existing campaign briefing process is complemented with a controlled test and scale program that validates new methods, scaling success quickly into best practice. Now, this does not mean that cookieless is not a massive challenge, but it is a challenge that forces us to be self-critical and rethink the effectiveness of standard media-based measurement framework. And this presents a great opportunity for brands who lean into this challenge. If they lean in, we can work in partnership on their digital investments and better define outcomes that are linked to their business and marketing needs. Thriving in a cookieless future is dependent on evolving the skill sets we look for in digital advertising activators. Campaign managers are already highly skilled operators, excellent at using off-the-shelf DSP tools to set up campaigns and optimizing investment to deliver the best results. And historically, this has rested on activating against the desired target audiences. With the disappearance of cookies, off-the-shelf audiences will be in short supply. So as well as being experts at setting up and managing campaigns, activators will also have to develop coding, data science, and data validation skills so that they can build and manage custom algorithms and orchestrate diverse data inputs. Immediately, this means embracing marketing science expertise. At Xaxis, we can support brands in this endeavor, as we have over 100 marketing scientists globally. Importantly, taking a custom approach to algorithmic trading gives brands a transparent ownership of the algorithms they are using, and also means they are not tied to specific buying platforms. This last point is important because successfully building and deploying custom cookieless algorithms requires a shift in philosophy to ad tech. Historically, our industry's approach to ad tech has been about developing and then operating within end-to-end technology stacks. Just like programmatic activators, the programmatic activators that I've described, who use off-the-shelf tools, data, and media to best deliver efficient digital advertising. Now, developing a consistent and consolidated approach to ad tech platforms should still be a key foundation of our strategy. We need to move beyond thinking about end-to-end solutions and also think about technology as building blocks. This means a focus on technologies that can plug into various platforms and provide a layer of customization on top of their existing capabilities, giving brands more ownership of the algorithms, modeling, audiences, supply, and creative strategies they use across all of these different technologies. And this is why at Xaxis, we have invested in agnostic technologies and expertise across supply, AI, creative, and data that can support in this pursuit. The shifts in programmatic talent and technology are driven by the need to evolve our industry's historic reliance on audience as the priority signal for performance. The disappearance of third-party cookies will weaken our ability to find scalable audience signals, and ironically, this somewhat brings us back to the days of pre-digital planning. As to adapt, we need to place more emphasis on signals like publisher sites, geo, time of day, contextual, as well as advertiser first-party data to develop a more holistic approach to targeting. Data path optimization works by taking a slightly different approach to planning process. Rather than building an audience profile, we first audit all available data sources and make these available for data science modeling based on the channels being used. Now, let me give you a quick example of how this process can work. Let's take an FMCG brand who has traditionally looked to deliver targeting reach against an in-market audience segment. But with cookieless, we would no longer have access to this targeting audience. So we start by uncovering there is offline customer research data that indicates when people buy the product and that the FMCG brand knows the typical stock distribution of their product at a granular geo region. Our marketing science team then takes these data sets, normalizes them, and runs forecasting and correlation models to understand the relationship between time and location as a proxy to purchase intent. And the ideal media budget distribution is then worked out on thousands of different geo and temporal combinations. We know that this is a video campaign and that it needs to be delivered on YouTube and video inventory from the trade desk. So we develop an algorithm for both platforms based on the data science modeling that can manage bidding strategies and budget allocation across these two demand-side platforms. And this algorithm is then also coded to optimize based on multiple key performance indicators, delivering targeted reach with a viewability goal that is distributed not by target audience, but based on optimal temporal and geo combinations that have a higher likelihood of customer purchasing the products. This process is iterative. Taking the above example, if we get a validated use case, then we can build in new data sets to test. So lastly, we require a thorough test and scale approach to create a solid foundation for a brand's cookieless evolution. Now, this means that traditional media planning processes need to be complemented with a collaborative test and scale process where the brand, agency, and Xaxis all work on the shared problem of cookieless. This starts with discovery, going through the data path optimization process, and ensuring clarity on objectives before together developing cookieless hypotheses that can be translated into a pilot program. And these pilots are then run via a controlled testing framework where success or failure is validated and immediately either scaled or discarded. So test and scale, we can evolve best practice to improve advertiser outcomes. So that's, in summary, how Xaxis helps advertisers to navigate these complex paradigm shifts. So on behalf of Carlos and myself, I would like to thank you for your attention.